welcome to Sabbath Cafe Podcast, where we talk about spirituality, creativity, and beauty in everyday life. You are listening to episode 4, How I Work Through a Creative Block. So this year, I've decided to change up my schedule and devote more time to my creative projects. I've been writing blogs for about 4 years, and I've been painting for about 5, even though sometimes it feels like I'm collecting art supplies more than I'm painting. But overall, I'm pretty happy about how much progress I've made in the last few years. But still, I want to see how much further I can go if I put more time and effort into these areas. Because it does take time to perfect your skills. It doesn't matter which medium you're working with, whether it's writing or podcasting or painting or video editing. It takes practice to be better at your art. So this year, I've decided I'm going to make it a priority to develop my skills in the area of writing and painting. In the beginning, it was great. I was really excited. Kind of like what happens when we start a new project. I had all these ideas, but a couple of weeks into it, I was just burned out. I did keep my schedule, but creatively, I hit a wall. I wasn't happy with the progress I was making. I had plenty of projects to work on, but I did not have any insights about how to move forward and take these projects to the next step. I felt like a failure even before I began sometimes. Actually, I've heard about how people sometimes experience a creative block like this. I've read about it from the artists that I follow. I know everyone hit a wall like this, and that's okay. But when I was in the rut myself, I felt hopeless, and it was overwhelming. Sometimes it felt like I was stuck in quicksand. The more I tried to push through, the deeper I sank into it. It's not until recently that I was able to look back and understand what contributed to my frustration and how I walked through it. So today, I'd like to share my experience about working through my creative blocks. One of the major reasons why I usually hit a wall is when I lose my creative confidence. So the first part I wanted to share is how did I get my creative confidence back? For about a year now, I haven't been very happy with my art pieces. So I started trying out new techniques and styles, but every time I go through my painting process, I would get stuck in the same place. Creatively, I felt like I was stuck in Groundhog's Day. I kept repeating the same pattern, and I didn't know how to get out of it. I was so discouraged. I felt like my confidence as a painter just went down the drain. I was bored with my old creative style, and yet I couldn't come up with anything different. Painting anything became such a negative experience for me. And while I was in that low, I happened to meet up with my old art teacher for coffee. She's an amazing lady in her 70s, and she still loves to paint, and she has such a drive to create. When I explained and talked about my frustrations, she suggested that I go back to the basics and try some sketching exercises. Sure, why not? I thought it couldn't hurt. I really wasn't making much progress anyway, so I plopped myself down at a cafe and I just sketched. I sketched my teapot, I sketched the people, I doodled on my napkins, and as I sketched, amazing thing happened. I remembered what I loved about creating art. Going back to these simple exercises reminded me how fun it was to just get out and draw. No pressure, just for the pleasure of drawing. At that time, I was feeling very discouraged about working with watercolors. And this little break in doing sketching just built up my confidence again. I love doing pencil drawings and I'm pretty good at it. And just to kick back and do the basics reminded me of how much I've grown as an artist. I only felt like a failure because I couldn't meet my own expectations, and that was the key. This overwhelming negativity I was feeling was because I was disappointed with my own progress. I put so much pressure and expectations on myself that I just wasn't happy anymore. And when I was able to go back to the basics, it reminded me of how much it was to just draw. Also, when I was drawing, there was no pressure. It's funny how inspired I felt when I was just having fun. From that point on, one project at a time, I was able to regain the momentum in my creative process. Besides building up my confidence, when I'm feeling blocked, I still make sure that I continue to invest in a creative atmosphere, building up a creative atmosphere around me. Especially when I feel frustrated, I'll take breaks from my workspace and do things that feeds my imagination. And this time around, I took an opportunity to visit a local art show. There happened to be a show by a group of local artists at a coffee shop in my town. And so I stopped by and I loved it. Just looking at the different artist style inspired me in so many ways. And it was fun seeing people try out different ideas and make it work. I feel like when I paint, I'm so afraid of failing that I'm afraid of taking chances. And I think that's why it sucked all the inspirations out of the process for me. And it was so freeing to visit the show and see all the artists doing different styles. I took some ideas and I thought, why not? And I tried out the new ideas I learned from the show, and that helped me break through my creative block also. In addition to taking these outings, I also have some routine exercises that I do regularly to keep the creative energy flowing. I journal, I take walks, and I pray and meditate. Many of my exercises actually come from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. If you never read that, I would highly recommend it. Julia is an experienced writer and has a lot of insights in how to help us be in tune with our creative side. Her exercises were very helpful for me to build up my routine. And when I feel like my creative well is dry and I'm stuck in my to-do list mindset, journaling and taking walks have really helped to sort out my stress points and shift me back into the creative and intuitive mindset again. And last but not least, one of the key things I try to focus on when I'm feeling discouraged or I'm feeling blocked is to learn to pay attention to my muse. Sometimes when I hit a wall in the middle of writing, usually that means I've gone off track. Somewhere along the line, I had developed an idea, but it's just not working anymore. No matter how hard I try, I just can't write past that point. And when that happens, it's usually a sign I need to take a break and try and sort things out. And that's when my practical side flips out. What? Taking a break? But what about all these work I've done? We are so close. All I need is to finish and push past this point and I'll be done. My rational side is complaining like mad. But this is exactly the time to pay attention to my creative instincts. Something is wrong. And that's why my creative side is holding up the stop sign. And usually after a short break or a good night's sleep, I would come up with a much better solution that solves all of my problems and kick my writing up a level. I realized that I need to trust the process and be willing to follow the muse, that my creative side knows what it's doing, and I just need to be patient and learn to give it time to show me what is the problem so we can resolve it and move past it. This time around, my creative block has lasted a lot longer than before. To be honest, I was still struggling through these feelings while putting this podcast together. I think the time I put in to put this podcast together is record-breaking for me. But I think this is something that everyone goes through once in a while. Creative work is more of an organic process. I learned that I can't manage it like I manage the other to-do list in my life. I can't just come up with a checklist and check them off according to my schedule. I know some friends who can do that, but for me, it just doesn't quite work that way. What does work is for me to be patient and to learn to work with my intuitive side rather than trying to control it. I have to set aside my time for my mind to incubate different ideas, to do the research and to sort through different ways of doing things, to ideate. And the more I understand about my creative process, it has been much easier to work with it rather than work against it. And to be honest, getting this podcast together has been quite an inspiration for me while I'm putting down all these ideas. It's been fun to learn about my own process. So now I'm going to wrap this up and go play with some watercolor ideas that just came into my mind. I wish you lots of creative goodness. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk next time. You have been listening to Sabbath Cafe Podcast. If you enjoyed this, please visit sabbathcafeblog.com for more information. Thank you.